Hi, everyone. Welcome to this leadership session in the Distributed SQL Summit. I hope everyone had a chance to watch the keynote with Karthik Ranganathan. I'm really excited about our speaker in this session. We have Bhaskar Ghosh, also known as BG, who's a partner and CTO at 8VC. BG has had a remarkable career in tech leadership in the Silicon Valley over 2 decades that spans operating roles and investing. So BG was the VP of engineering at NerdWallet. Before that, he was the head of data engineering at LinkedIn. And earlier in his career, BG led engineering at the Yahoo Right Media display ads team, the display ad exchange. And BG, you started out your career in Informix and Oracle. Is that right?
That is correct. I did my PhD in graph algorithms and parallel computing, had no clue what databases were. Advisor told me to go west. So instead of joining academia, I went to a company called Informix, which I didn't know was the hottest database company of the time, and accidentally started learning all about databases. That is correct.
BG, looking at your career, that is about as legitimate a tech career as I have seen. Someone who's got a unique perspective that blends techie and engineering leadership with an investing background. So let's start there, right? That's a great place to start. Let's start with some of the important trends you're seeing in data and data-driven applications. What's your kind of 10,000-foot view of the big secular trends that are shaping application development and are transforming enterprises today and making them more cloud and data native?
Okay. Before I take the question, let me just spend half a minute on a couple of things. First is big thanks to Sudha and Bill and Kannan Karthik for inviting me. It's been a pleasure doing these couple of talks for you guys. And also want to call out my colleague Vivek, our wonderful guy from Yale Computer Science, who just joined us. Vivek and Sudha helped me prepare this whole thing. So very grateful to you both, Vivek. Thank you, Sudha and Vivek. Also, a shout out to my firm, 8VC. I'm so fortunate to be there. I was an accidental VC, didn't know anything about investing. Joe and I became friends, and I joined 8VC, which is, I'm just starting my 5th year. We are a very entrepreneurial company. We are proactive. Our motto is that the world is broken, let's fix it. Our partnership has a very heavy background in data, vertical SaaS, and kind of automation. We are now managing about $5.5 billion, just raised a couple of new funds. Focuses on all things data and cloud and AI, but very heavy focus on vertical SaaS and automation for legacy industries, regulated industries. And also we are one of the best firms doing bio IT and health IT. The other unique thing about 8VC, which endears me to our firm and also I think interests entrepreneurs, is we also start companies ourselves. We have a build program where we incubate and start companies, 2 to 5 companies every year in SaaS, in bio IT, logistics, insurance. So very entrepreneurial and delighted to be here at 8VC. So your question, Sudha, was more about what are some of the secular trends in enterprises I'm seeing? And obviously this is a talk about data. So a lot of what we discuss will be with a view towards how is it affecting data in general. I'd say secularly, coming from the software eating the world thesis, all enterprises have realized, whether you're on the West Coast or East Coast or in the middle of the country, you have to become a software company. To become competitive, you have to go to software. You not only use SaaS from your departmental IT, you also have to build software for your own workflows, your own automation. And in this process of transformation, enterprises, there are 2 main journeys they're taking. One is in becoming a software company, they are also trying to become data companies. Companies are finding that data is going to be an asset to them, which is not about cost. It's actually about positive ROI. And the second revolution that we all know about is cloud has become a major driver in this adoption of software as to what sort of software should it be? How do we run it? It so happens that old on-prem software and the new cloud software have fundamental differences. So I would say the motion we see is all about a software-first enterprise, a data-first enterprise, and a cloud-first enterprise. Now, stopping for a reason, in this talk, we want to focus on a couple of things, as the title gave away. Instead of coming at it from a data angle first, what we see from 8VC is there's an explosion and a revolution happening in the application development arena. And application development is becoming a very critical path for the business future of enterprises. Second, as I said, data democracy is changing on enterprise in fundamental ways. And what's happening is that persona plus applications revolution is what I find most interesting. That cross product is defining what data is going to look, a cloud first data ecosystem, what does it look like? So coming back to applications and personas, we'll dive into it a bit more. The other thing I want to call out is this has always been the case. If you look at relational databases back in the Oracle days, airline management systems, banking systems affected how relational databases were built, transactional system, how did they scale? Then data warehouses came, which were more read-only. But applications, business applications, and after the e-commerce revolution, consumer applications have always affected data. So data, even though now people might say databases are passe, it's all solved, they're not. What we hope to explore in this exchange, Sudha, is that databases are not dead. Cloud databases are kind of the future. And without them, a lot of these revolutions in data democracy and application explosion would not happen. Let me give a small example, and then I'll hand the mic back to you. When we were lucky to be thinking very fundamentally back in 2010 at LinkedIn about what database tier to build, I remember, we looked at Mongo. We were trying to, LinkedIn was growing exponentially. And it turned out we built something fairly innovative called Espresso, which was a distributed document style database system, for OLTP purposes to support the burgeoning, growing set of applications at LinkedIn. But the design decision we made, looking back, was very interesting. We built a document style API and programming model on top, domain model on top. But the backend was a SQL database. We picked MySQL with a DB backend. So different APIs, you can think of it as different APIs, but with a scalable SQL backend. It so happens that the founders of Yugabyte, Kannan and Karthik, thought about it very deeply during their Facebook journey. And in the inception of Yugabyte, lay that next gen idea that multiple APIs, single database. So I just want to call out that the interplay of applications with what is needed from the data has defined foundational technologies. And hopefully we'll scratch some of that surface. Anyway, back to you, Sudha.
Awesome, BG. By the way, the way you just described that pluggable API in front of a transactional backend it sounds exactly like a precursor to what Yugabyte has built, because that is the way we talk about Yugabyte DB as well, right? It's a transactional distributed SQL backend, but the front end is a pluggable API where you have multiple APIs depending on what your application needs and what you want to talk to the application. So that's perfect. And based on what you just said now, there's a lot for us to dig into, right? There's just so many different areas, application evolution, personas, new kind of personas coming in. Let's start with the personas, right? Because I think that is an interesting and fairly differentiated perspective. I haven't seen too many thought leaders talk about personas, right? So can you elaborate on the point about the different personas that want to interact with data and with data-driven applications? Like, how do you categorize them, and what's important to them when they think about the data tier?
Fair enough. I think in the march of a software first, data first enterprise, what we are finding is the theme around leveraging data, cloud also, but leveraging data is leading to like a next generation explosion of data democracy. Earlier, when you talked about data, you'd say, okay, some business analysts will use a spreadsheet in a sales or marketing department. There will be a data engineer handling a bit of data, doing ETL. IT will get us some machines. What's happening now is the sheer volume and number of personas around data, whether it is in IT infrastructure, whether it is in data engineering, data scientist, all the way to business personas, all the way to CEOs, CFOs, is just an order of magnitude. So broadly, you can categorize it into, I would say, technical and semi-technical personas. I would say in the technical personas, application developers are going to be the most formidable and largest growing group. And we'll dive into what is interesting about the revolutions happening in applications. So let's table that for a second. So application developers, you can think of them as product developers also, data-driven product developers. You can think of them as people not only building the front ends, but also building the bodies of the microservices. So all sorts of engineers, front-end engineers, back-end engineers who are implementing pieces of the front end and back end of applications. The other technical personas can be data scientists, all the way to analysts who might be writing SQL or using Python pandas. And that part of the funnel of talent in an enterprise is exponentially growing. Second is everything around operations and manageability, cloud ops, DevOps, DB ops, SREs, application ops, all these personas, everybody thinking about CI/CD and the developer lifecycle. all of them need to have a good interface around deployment, operations, monitoring of data. Remember the beautiful product that Snowflake is. They didn't just make amazing multi-level design decisions. They brought a lot of their knowledge from their past at Oracle around the manageability and cloud deployment, just one button deployment. So deployment monitoring in a cloud-first environment, those personas are heavily affected by everything that's happening around data. So that's number two. Number three is data is trying to become as easy as pie. And people don't want to go to IT all the time to leverage the data that they think that they deserve to have, right? So what's happening is the budget holder persona is also exploding. The mid-level decision makers want to have their own data marts, their own source of truth database. They just want APIs into it. And they don't want to think about going back to IT and having manageability and operability problems. So the budget holders earlier used to be just somebody in IT. That grew to the data infrastructure owner. That grew to the product owner. That's all the way growing to like the biz ops owner sitting in sales and marketing. It's pretty incredible. So that's one. And then you go all the way to the C-level of all the big verticals like financial services, banking, insurance. You'll slowly notice all of them are beginning to have two fundamental changes in teams. One is many of them are having these strategic architecture groups, and many of them are beginning to have a fairly powerful chief data officer. And this strategic architecture group are the ones who are bringing in new technology much faster. And 80% of the time, they're around data, automation, and AI. And the chief data officer now is beginning to dictate a lot of stuff around uptake of the new technologies and have a lot more influence on budgets in general. So if you take all of these personas together and kind of multiply them and put them into workflows, you can understand that there is this massive exponential movement happening around pull from the persona side. Now, what do these personas need? Ultimately, they all become dependent on certain parts of the data tier. It's as simple as that. The SRE and the cloud ops people need the right abstractions for spinning up clusters and want the right metrics and monitoring tools. The application developers want a reliable, scalable database that they can deploy anywhere on the planet. Even data scientists, think about it. We may think that they don't depend on OLTP databases, but they do in a very subtle way. Very often, the real core, hardcore data that the data scientists are working with are coming from source of truth databases, which is running on the online side of the enterprise. So if you don't have change data capture supported natively from those databases, the data scientists are not going to get the source of truth data. So anyway, so all of these people are linked. This village size is growing. That's kind of one part of it. Does that make sense, Sudha?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think it is something we see at Yugabyte as well, because the personas that you're describing, a lot of them, there's a shift in the dynamic that's happened, right? You have these application developers who are increasingly driving purchase decisions on the database side as well. And these people want completely different set of things. What they want is essentially a database that they can just spin up and start building applications against. And they care about building scalable, resilient, global applications. So a data tier that can serve them that without any hassle is an important thing. And the point you raised about SREs and DevOps is critical, right? For them, it's about automation, ease of use, giving them the abstractions to manage databases at scale and deliver as a service. And the point that I think you and I have discussed in the past, VG, is a lot of this is happening in the broader context of transformation in other parts of the infrastructure stack, infrastructure, cloud, application layer, with everything we've seen with Spring and Pivotal and all of that, right? So every layer of the stack is already seeing those changes. And now the audiences, the personas are already trained to expect that from the data tier as well. And so, critical point. Yeah.
The other thing that you already hinted at, we should move to what's happening on the application side. Is that a good thing?
That's a great.
I think we covered the personas in a fair bit of detail, and just take all those personas and do a cross product of all their workflows, all their needs with what's happening on the application side. I'll give you an example without naming a company. One of the largest healthcare and health services companies in the US. Let's say they're not sitting on the East or the West Coast, somewhere else in the US. We go visit them, they're very close to 8VC. And we find out that the CEO, the CTO, CRO, they're betting their future growth on, check this out, 400 new data-driven applications they will build. And these applications, I would say 70% were consumer-facing, 30% were applications which are facing the healthcare workflow inside hospitals and the insurance side. And they say, hey, we have decided we're going to go all in on GraphQL. Now you're talking about a company which is not known for its technology capabilities at all. They are not only betting their business model on 400 new apps, they are saying we don't even want to use RESTful APIs. We're going to go all in on GraphQL. That happened to me about 2 years ago. No, actually that happened to me around the time that Kannan and Karthik came and visited us at 8VC. We had just come back from visiting this unnamed company. And I actually talked to Kannan and Karthik about it. And someday, hopefully, this said unnamed company will also use Yugabyte as the data tier. What we found as we started digging is the Java Spring community is already massive, right? And if massive community, rightfully so, has driven so many revolutions. Even in the Java Spring community, they have, in the Java Spring Boot, when they did Spring Boot, they thought about the data APIs much more profoundly. So they are also thinking, how can we change our interaction with the data API? How can we go more declarative? How can we support more backend? But let's assume it's not sexy. That's coming from the legacy side. It's massive. There are two other revolutions happening there. One is the entire CMS WordPress community has now affected a whole new family of content-heavy applications. And they have now mixed with everything we were doing in CDMs, right? That where you are basically delivering static content, and most of it, the work will be done in the front end. You don't want to go retrieve stuff from the database. So very clear separation of front end and back end. And the revolution that's happening is through the Jamstack revolution, right? Jamstack revolution, the brilliant companies like Vercel and Netlify, who are growing exponentially, where application programmers are not only using these new frameworks, they're saying something new. They're saying that we want to be able to deploy our applications anywhere on the planet, wherever you can guarantee a certain latency. And I'm not going to do read-only, by the way. I'll do some writes also, maybe 80% reads, 20% writes. And we were astounded. We were like, my goodness. So the whole notion of an edge is changing. The edge can be any of these data centers anywhere on the planet. It so happens when you are in the Jamstack, Vercel, Netlify community, and you want to do that, the data tier actually is a very hard problem. Why? Because of locality and replication. And which geolocation do you go to? What sort of governance and privacy problems do they have? The application programmers are saying, I don't want to think about the data tier. Just make sure everything works in a geo-distributed manner with replication and some freshness guarantees. Very hard problem. So the CMS community now on steroids is now asking questions of the data tier that they didn't ask before. So they are driving revolutions back into the cloud data tier. Second example, REST APIs are amazing, but REST APIs have a lot of problems around, too many endpoints, too much data being retrieved. So the GraphQL revolution that came out of Facebook has taken hold. People are essentially going the declarative way. They love GraphQL, so they want to, do more with data and not think about data. What that is leading to is actually a very interesting, when we dug into GraphQL-based applications, we found that actually there were new data revolutions happening in the backend of GraphQL. Two examples. Application developers now want to pull data from many sources. Postgres is a very important source, but they want to pull data from other GraphQL APIs. They want to pull data from Stripes and other external APIs. So there's a federation play going on. They want multiple backend databases to be able to available. Second, they want to have triggers in the backend where they can actually trigger active workflows. The reason I'm giving you guys all this, details is application revolution is actually generating more interesting complexity and needs on the mid-tier and the backend data tier. And that I don't think it's very well understood yet. If you're inside a company like Yugabyte, or you are running some database team like in Aurora at AWS, you'll see this firsthand. But this revolution that is happening now under the covers is not very well understood generally in the community. At least I haven't found it. So coming back to summarizing it, not just the legacy massive communities around Java, Java Spring Boot, but the new revolutions happening around GraphQL, the new revolutions happening around CMS, Jamstack, are all secular pulls that are happening that are causing more requirements to be handed down to the mid-tier and the backend. The other subtle thing that's happening that Sudha, you have always pointed out that I love is enterprises are also getting consumerified. The applications that they are using or writing, SaaS applications, B2B applications, B2B2C applications, they don't want it to look like old, command line interfaces we used to do back in our Oracle days, right? No more SQL Plus like thing. They want it to look as beautiful as modern consumer applications. And that means they want more data, more recommendations, more feedback loops, and heavier guarantees from the backend. The way we who were fortunate to build some of the backends at the Googles and the Facebooks and Yahoos and LinkedIns of the world, all of that was generated by these B2C and B2B2C applications sitting on top, right? So a lot of that is basically now getting democratized. I mean, very slow-moving, old legacy enterprises saying, no, my application got to be not only good-looking, I want near real-time data. I want, AI indexes. I want secondary indexes from my database, right? Nightmare to implement anybody who's done secondary indexes. So I think lots of cool things happening there. And now to summarize, you take the cross product of the application revolution happening and the data personas, it's a fertile time. It's a great time to go back and think about how do we make it all work on the cloud? How do we make it all work in the data tier? So that's kind of, I hope I'm not speaking too quickly. I'm getting a bit excited here, but back to you.
No, that is awesome, BG. And it's a great perspective. I think you kind of talked very broadly about applications. You talked about personas, huge shift in what databases are going. What the takeaway I'm getting here is databases are not dead yet. And data innovation is still very much happening. As an investor and a technologist, what are your thoughts on how the data tier should be solving some of the problems that you just described? And where does a company like Yugabyte fit into this picture?
Yeah, I think one of the important things to make sure that the application revolution actually succeeds is any data tier has to be interoperable with development frameworks like Spring, Django, has to support GraphQL, has to support the new data replication requirements and mapping requirements coming from, what I just mentioned, the Jamstack stuff. So one level lower, if you now started looking at microservices, because they are, even though microservices are actually not that easy to grow and maintain, there's a fair amount of openness and adoption of it. So if you look at the microservices, they now basically need a data tier below them, which makes them resilient, scalable, geo-distribution. And and now if you start looking at which verticals are these requirements coming from, I'd say payments, product catalog, shopping carts, e-commerce, all the way from fintech and banks and investment services to travel, large B2C companies, B2B2C companies, all need stuff like this, which is resilient, scalable, transactional guarantees, geo distribution. The other interesting thing, which specifically for HVC is very exciting, is we think about the edge a lot. Like Vivek and I think about what does the edge mean? What's really happening at what level, which level of the edge? And I would say what used to be called IoT, or what we now call more like edge applications, they are very heavy point writes. So write scaling and very heavy data volume are two very important requirements that are getting pushed down into the data tier. And security, what we found by talking to all the CDN players, the cable players, the mobile players, and we look at applications that are getting employed all the way to devices, all the way down to the edge data centers, is security is a massive thing. Role-based access, employee security, enterprise, all these rules, fairly complicated stuff, and making it all work in the microservices tier as well as the data tier is a huge requirement, right? So where I'm going with this is all of these verticals are pulling stuff from data. And from an HVC perspective, what we are beginning to think about very deeply is, you can't just go re-implement everything everywhere. You can't say, oh, I have one front-end tier for this colo. I have another different microservices tier for the other colo. I have separate data tiers for every colo. We are thinking very deeply about, is there a reference architecture play happening here? We're not talking about data warehouses and analytics here, so let's keep that aside for a second. Let's focus on the online universe, right? Source of truth databases. Even there, so we are thinking, hey man, you need a front end, you need a back end of a front end, you need the microservice stuff, you need a cache, you need a data tier, but you don't want to re-implement all of them for all of these places. I think that's the other interesting thing that's happening with cloud native databases, is that they have the opportunity now of being what we call the reference architecture. So the same database with different APIs, different tunability guarantees can appear in all these levels of what we call the edge first universe. So databases becoming part of this new reference architecture is a massive technology driver behind some of the thesis at 8BC. And I think it's really interesting. And I think that world is just opening up now, and some foundational companies are going to come out who can be part of the reference architecture. So that's kind of that's one part. The other part that I haven't mentioned is open source in parallel is becoming a huge driver in the choice of these reference architectures. Ultimately, these applications, I mentioned this unnamed healthcare, health services, health insurance company, right? Imagine that those 400 applications are now running their business. That's where 80% of their revenue is coming from. Now imagine if you give them 15 different reference architectures to run these applications on, it's going to be like a terrible situation to be in. So I think the opportunity of the reference architecture also is in risk remediation. And risk remediation for those buying enterprises is often open source, because they want to be sure that any vendor, Series B vendor, seed vendor, Series G vendor, startup coming in, because so much innovation is happening from the startup side in the reference architecture track, that they are actually open source first. So there's risk remediation. So you are not getting, essentially you don't want to get backed into a corner that you cannot move out. So I think that's another important theme driving the one side of the reference architecture. So that's kind of the general thing. Now, I have a conflict of interest. I'm an investor in Yugabyte. I've known Kannan and Karthik for many, many, many years. I've been a big fan, but let me just say a few things around where does Yugabyte fit into all this? Or, Yugabyte is just an example. This is kind of the family I belong to as the board member. But I think any database, any cloud database company which wants to be part of this reference architecture revolution has to keep in mind that it's a non-trivial path to go. I mean, if I start writing down all the platform infrastructure manageability problems that are getting pushed down to the cloud database, so that you kind of free up the application personas and the application development and the data personas, you start thinking, oh my God, so what do I have to do for this cloud first database? Well, you have to have transactions and indexes. You have to have HA and resilience. You have to choose which part of the CAP theorem that you actually stick with. I mean, Yugabyte chose C and P, but these are all a set of optimizations, right? You have to have horizontal scalability. Your latency and performance should be amazing. You should have operational simplicity. You should offer geographic distribution of data. You should be the same DB, but for multi-API, not just for Cassandra or Mongo, but also for SQL variants. And then the hard thing that I want to mention is the multi-cloud component. That's actually a very subtle and hard part. Let's come back to it. So all of these list of features I gave are incredibly difficult to implement. They're incredibly difficult to implement. The team that you need behind it is incredibly difficult to build. And I think open source plays a role there. If you don't do open source, you cannot stabilize such complicated features. If you don't have a network effect in the testing and the uptake side. Coming back to it, the other really important part, because I mentioned multi-API, I think I mentioned Django and other front-end frameworks, is you have to have backward compatibility. If people are going to send, people are going to send you their source of truth applications and data, that transition of old applications to the new database is a very hard path. So there are all these subtleties there. I think I went a little bit too deep into it, but hopefully people got a sense that this revolution, to support this application and data persona revolution upstairs, you need a very significantly difficult to build and necessary to build data tier in the bottom. And we're kind of very excited by it. That's just want to say one more thing. I know we are probably, how much time do we have, Sudha?
We are right out of time, but
right
it's
out
okay,
of time.
Vijay.
I just want to call out, we are huge fans of the team, Bill, Kannan, Karthik, Mikhail, a lot of my old friends from Oracle and Amazon have joined. I won't name all of them, but we are like huge fans of the team that Yugabyte has built. And without building a team like this revolution cannot happen. So big fan of the team. Back to you, Sudha.
Perfect, Vijay. I know there's just so much innovation that still remains to be done and a lot of exciting stuff happening right now. I know we are right on time, so I wanted to put these thoughts very quickly up here and have you kind of walk through what you see as a 1-minute summary of what we just discussed.
Who wrote these slides? Thank you, Vivek. Yeah, I think, thank you, Sudha. Data native, cloud native application development is happening at a scale that's like significantly bigger than we imagined. Enterprises want these applications to have like a consumer flavor, explosion of technical and non-technical personas around data. I think we covered that. And databases are not dead. I just want to call that out. Databases are going to be part of this amazing reference stack revolution that without which the cloud and data native application revolution is not going to succeed. So I know we packed a lot into this talk, but hopefully the listeners got a little bit of the two things about the prism through which we are looking at these revolutions from an HBC point of view. And second, why we are excited to be part of the Yugabyte journey, and why we feel like we're very privileged and honored to be part of the Yugabyte team. So that's kind of the summary.
Thank you so much, BG. And it has been a pleasure working with you too. And I know you're going to continue this conversation with Chintan later in the day. So folks, please do join that session as well. It's going to be fascinating, deep diving into financial services and kind of talking about the innovation that's happening there. BG, thank you so much for taking the time. It's great speaking with you.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you.